God. The face of God. What is the face of God? It must be something tangible, something that you can see and touch. To be of any practical value, you see my face, although it's not very good, but that's all right. At least you can see it, and you can touch it, if you are near enough. And so God is that way. We must be able to see and touch Him, but not through these senses, but through intuition. And we also must be able to feel His great love. He is not seen and touched through the ordinary senses as people try so hard to do, but He is easily seen and touched if you follow the right method and meditate correctly. Follow one who has seen and touched God as our beloved Master. We should realize these things. God can be seen. His face can be seen. And you can hear His great cosmic sound. Yes, you can touch Him in a more real way than you can touch with the ordinary sense of touch. And so, we must realize that God is the Word. God primarily is nothing but, I should say, is reduced to consciousness plus the power of that consciousness. And when that moves, when the Spirit of God moves, it creates what is known as the Word, the holy vibration. And that manifests as the great cosmic light spread throughout eternity. But in that light is the touch of God, the feeling of God, His glorious omnipresence, that if we meditate correctly, we can perceive and we can feel God with us. We can touch Him. Realize that it is the Spirit of God which you have to see and touch. Not the outer manifestation of this worldly kingdom, but the inner underlying noumena or cause of all things, God Himself. And so the great cosmic light, which is the manifestation of the holy vibration, the Word, is the face of God. Now, for some practical points, in this great cosmic light, the face of God, is what? Is His omniscient consciousness. Is, greater than that, His love. And so you see, the great cosmic light is not just a light. That's one part of the manifestation of God, the face of God. But in that face, if you merge in that great light of God, the light gives way to God's great love. The light gives way to the ocean of joy and bliss. And so that light, which seems so wonderful when you perceive it, by following right meditation, you see it spread out through all eternity, that face of God. Even that loses its grossness, as the Master says, and becomes the sea of joy and bliss. God's great light and love are knowable. They are realizable. They are truth. Now, that great light of God, the great face of God, is cosmic consciousness. Nothing but that. You've read books about cosmic consciousness. Read them all. You will see that everyone who experienced it, even in a moment's flash, or could stay in it, perceived what? The great light of cosmic consciousness all around. And so in your meditations, as you proceed, dive deeper, and one point your mind, you will begin to see the lights of cosmic consciousness opening up. Realize that. There are certain fundamentals which everyone who experiences the Spirit of God within, in the proper way, not in imagination, but through realization, these fundamental points are there. You will see them if you meditate deeply and get out of the attachment to this body, get out of your astral body into the great ocean of which we spoke this morning, the ocean of God's Spirit, His omnipresence, His glorious omnipresence. Realize that. Now let us turn to the Bible first for a reference, and then a reference from the Hindu scriptures, which clearly point this out. In Revelation, the 27th chapter, the 4th verse, what do we read? Listen carefully. And they shall see His face, and His name shall be in their forehead. Those who really want God shall see His face, and His vibration, through which you expand your consciousness into His great omnipresence, into the face of God, the sphere of eternity. That vibration is where? In the forehead. The name of God is the holy vibration, and you contact it at this point. And if you merge in it, you will expand your consciousness from this limited body into the great presence of God. The Bible points that out. And they shall see His face. Who? Those who want really to see God. And those to whom it means the greatest thing in their life. To whom it is paramount, they shall see God. And His name, His presence, His vibration, the Spirit of God moves. His vibration shall be in their forehead. They shall see the little spiritual sun at this point. They shall hear the holy vibration. And with that perception in their heart, they will feel the great love of God. Now, these things are actual. They can be experienced if you follow one who had that experience as the founder of Self-Realization Fellowship, our own beloved Master. Now, from the Hindu scriptures, the teachings of the Gita. O glorious omnipresence, O infinite, forever show thy glowing face of joy. The face of God is not something imaginary. It is actually glowing with spiritual light, with the great cosmic light. And so it says, show thy glowing face of joy in all my joys and in the flaming light of love for thee. In my flaming light of love for thee. Love is the key. You really must know God. And as it says, they shall see His face, and His name shall be in their forehead. Now going on, through this star at this point, through the star here, we can expand our limited consciousness so that we can see the face of God. And we can feel in that great light, the great cosmic light, in that we can feel His great intelligence, greatest of all, His love. Now, our Master has said this in one of his writings, Metaphysical Meditations. He says, I shall peer through the darkness of silence until my eyes of relativity open into the one inner eye of light. God's light, the great flame of light, the cosmic light, His great face, is the all-seeing eye. We have a replica of it at this point, where some see the spiritual eye, spoken of as the star of the east, because this is the body, the eye of intuition, or in Matthew, the eye if thine eye be single. Because this is a miniature of the great cosmic sun, the great sun, which produces all things, the great macrocosmic sun of righteousness. That is what gives the face of God, the rays of that great cosmic sun. And they are knowable when you pass through the little star at this point and expand into what you really are, children of God. And so in us, realize, we have a microcosmic sun, a replica of what? The face of God, the great spiritual sun, the light of which we can see and perceive and merge in. the face of God. And that little sun is the star of the east, the spiritual eye at this point. And as the Master says, those who pass through that star and expand the consciousness, then you will see the face of God. Now, with closed eyes, when one passes through deep concentration and a desire to know God and God alone, when one does that, and they will perceive oneself as the great sphere of eternity. You know, you've heard of the great circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is unlimited and nowhere. When one rises above this body consciousness and passes through the little star of the east at this point, they will be the cosmic center. Yes, the center of eternity. And you will be there in that center, and you will perceive the sphere of eternity unlimited. You cannot exhaust it. Now, what lights that sphere of eternity? Cosmic light, the face of God. So realize that you have right within yourself the door whereby you can sit as the center of eternity and consciously see the sphere of eternity. That's the vision of God. That's His glorious omnipresence. That's truth. That's reality. These things are knowable. Realize that. And so as you leave this body behind with its limitations, and you become conscious of the coming of the great sphere of eternity, you will be there, the center of it, because God is your consciousness. As you look out around, you will, through the intuition of your soul, perceive eternity, the great cosmic light, the glorious omniscience of God. Now, unless you can do that in a conscious way, you do not know the face of God. He is not your own. You can do that because in the center of the spiritual eye is the little five-pointed star, the epitome of what? The epitome of cosmic consciousness. Now, when you imagine that, you will be the center of the great cosmic consciousness of God, the center of the great cosmic light, the center of His glorious omnipresence. And then you will know, beyond doubt, the face of God. These things are knowable. We have to work for them because the delusion is very strong and keeps us attached to the body. And so, realize, as I have said, the sphere of eternity, which you will see suddenly through the grace of God. The sphere of eternity is lighted by the great light of God, the cosmic light. That's the vision of God. Now, you cannot exhaust it because the circumference is nowhere. Limitless. Limitless. But you realize are the cosmic center because you were made in the image of God and you have a ray of His glorious omnipresence in the center of the spiritual eye, which many of you have seen. Isn't that wonderful? Now, if you want to see the face of God and see it actually through the intuition of the soul and feel, touch that great presence of God, eternity, know the method, pass through into His great omnipresence. Now, we are interested in how to see the face of God. Theory is all right, but let's be practical. How to see the face of God. I'll read just a few words of the Master from one of his metaphysical writings. Sit still in breathless silence. Turn your consciousness from the little binding body post, expecting every minute to make a dash for freedom into the infinite. So as your concentration sharpens, as you concentrate at this point and you gather together your forces, you will penetrate into the glorious omnipresence of God, you will have made the dash for freedom, as the Master points out. Now we have a like reference right in our own scriptures. It's most beautiful. In Psalm, the 27th Psalm, chapter, the 4th verse. Most wonderful, right from our own scripture. One thing have I desired of the Lord. The Lord is Christ consciousness, the presence of God in each one of us. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. Now, what is the temple of God? What is the temple of the Lord? The sphere, the great sphere of eternity. And so the psalmist says, if I can but dwell in that consciousness here, that I can behold the face of God, the great light of that sphere of eternity, and inquire into it, search into it all the days of my life. Because eternity, from ordinary standpoint, cannot be exhausted. These most beautiful words. Realize that the temple of which is spoken of in this psalm is the sphere of eternity. And that sphere of eternity is lighted by the great cosmic light of God. That's the face of God. And so finally, how to know and see the face of God? First, meditate deeply. Meditate deeply. Make God the first thing in your life. Want him above all other things. Feel him. Meditate deeply. Then you will find that the universe and your body melt first into the soundless voice. Because the great Om vibration cannot be heard with outward ears, with hearing as we know it. That's why it is called, the Master calls it, the soundless voice. And so your body, as you meditate deeply, along with the whole universe, will disappear, and what will you have first? The soundless voice, the great Om vibration, the holy vibration, the comforter of which Jesus spoke. And then as you penetrate deeply, you find that the sound becomes the great cosmic light, the face of God. As you concentrate on that sound and merge in it, it becomes the great light of the sphere of eternity. Actually, with its beauty, but then the Master finally says, the great light, the great face of God, the cosmic light, loses its grossness and becomes the sea of joy itself. And so that light is superseded, if we can say that, by what? By the great love of God, the great sea of bliss. Even the vibration of light gives way, so to speak, loses its grossness. That shows that the sea of joy is finer, is nearer to the bosom of God than even his great cosmic light, his face. And so we have these wonderful words of Master. Realize, meditate deeply, and this universe in your own body will disappear into the soundless void. Then as you search God out deeper and deeper, the sound becomes the great cosmic light. All over spread. And then as you merge and want God more and he draws you back to him, the light loses its grossness and becomes the sea of bliss and joy. Now that's knowing the face of God and touching him in a practical, real way. These are the Master's words. Those who meditate deeply can attain just those things. And I will close by reading a portion of one of the Master's letters to me to show you that this is not just imagination, but real. He says, but keep on meditating. Apply this, every one of you, to yourselves. Just because he wrote it to me is nothing. But it is applicable to every one of us as children of God. He says, but keep on meditating, and then shall come one day when all the veil will be torn away. All the veil of laws created by Maya and by us will be gone, and we will be free, standing face to face with our Divine Mother. That's the face of God. Divine Mother is the light aspect of a manifestation of God, because all things come from that. Science has shown that all things come from matter. That's Divine Mother. She gives us everything. And so the Master says, all the veil of laws created by Maya and by us, by our actions, will be gone, and we will be free, standing face to face with our Divine Mother. We will see her protection working behind the physical, untrammeled, uninterruptedly. Then nothing but the breeze of immortality and perennial joy will sustain us. So, grosser vibration of body and universe melt into the sound changes into the great cosmic light of God. But finally, that light loses its grossness in the infinite bosom of the great One Father.